Let's see here. Negative income tax. Negative income tax, based. Love the negative income tax. If we were to do universal basic income, negative income tax would be the one. Oh, old school. Thank you for the $4.99. I'm seriously usually considering not voting for president for the third time. Didn't vote president 2008, 2016. Old school. Thank you for the money, but save it. Go buy some methadone and get off whatever drugs you're on. Okay? Do appreciate it. Sorry for the gibberish. My autocorrect is biatch. That's fair. All right. Dan, I'll bring you on in 3, 2. Hello, sir.
Ewa, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
What is cracking?
You were just talking in regards of one of my major thesis in international relations I did 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I've been updating it in many ways. This is interesting because I'm an atheist. And the reason I am an atheist 100% is because I acknowledge the negative impacts that Abrahamic religions had on Western Hemisphere.
Sure. They definitely have both negative and positive impacts.
That's where we differ. I don't see any positive whatsoever.
Well, I would say, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with Jordan Peterson, number one?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Okay, that's fair. Well, I'm more than sympathetic to people who are not fans of Jordan Peterson. The entire basis of the idea of human rights and individual rights is, I would say, is a Christian idea, or at least a religious idea.
I would disagree.
Well, how can we? I mean, the Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident. Every person is endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. How do we arrive at that self-evidence outside of a religious framework?
There are 5 major points which we can argue in that sense. Number one, we see the
1 or 2.
Yeah, the 3 major points I would argue is that the construction of civil liberties as a norm within a constitutional republic originates and behaves from the construction of itself. In what way? One example of history that we have is the Carta Magna in England, when that important switch.
Magna Carta, yeah.
So that, alongside the projects that started happening 75 years ago, post-World War, and the accumulation that started happening because of the process of independence here in the Western Hemisphere, we see that fundamentally we said, okay, listen, democracies and the republics and this constitutional things that we're doing, inspired by the Enlightenment era of Europe, we said, we took those things and put it into practice. And we said,
the Enlightenment perspective is rooted in Christian ideals.
Not entirely. More secular than any other thing. Why? Because
I disagree, Dan. You need to embrace God.
We would have to argue then in regards to Voltaire, of Rousseau, of Locke, of etc., etc., etc. You know, that big era of Enlightenment thinkers of Europe. You see, what happened to the Enlightenment thinkers is what happened to Marx. Marx thought about this thing he called communism, but he was thinking, hey, look, that's a thing that I'm going to apply here in Germany. Next thing he knows is the Russians took it and then started applying it. You know, that's the thing. It's the same thing. Those damn Latin Americans, those damn Americans took the concepts of Enlightenment and they put it into practice. And we're the ones who effectively put it into practice, not the Europeans. The Europeans were screwed by the time the 90%, 95% of the process of independence had fulfilled here in the Western Hemisphere. So when we construct the theory of the state, those elements of freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of not being persecuted without a due process, freedom of freedom. Eventually, you will see that the freedom of syndicalismo or syndicates or unions was something that was incorporated into this whole thing. But mainly, if we see the 10 bases of those rights as construed by this new by this application of this idea of republics and democracy, etc., was secular. It didn't matter
it's a very complex topic, and we're not going to get to the bottom of it on this issue. Can I ask you something?
Mhm.
It's a completely tangential. It's completely unrelated, but I do want to get your opinion based on what we talked about last time. You said what is your perspective? Fuck communism, fuck capitalism, right? Isn't there a phrase?
Yeah.
It's something like that.
Fuck communism, fuck capitalism, fuck everything.
That's
ideology.
I want to ask you your perspective, because you are a Latin American, right? You would describe yourself as that. How do you feel about the term Latinx?
There is a discussion being done in that sense, because the diverse communities in Latin America, living in Latin America, got together and said, hey, listen, in Spanish, Latino
language.
Yes and no, because, for example, Latino or Latina, it has that masculine ending to it. Latino is for masculine, Latina for feminine. So we said, hey, listen, let's just put an E on the end. We come from,
but the whole. I took 2 years of Spanish, so I no sé mucho, porque yo sé un poco, right? It's all gendered language, right? It's everything is masculine or feminine. Not everything, but the majority of words, nouns, and then adjectives get modified based on what noun they're describing are masculine and feminine. Do you feel that is oppressive? That's reinforcing the binary? Because in my mind, this is my perspective. I think the attempt to eliminate the gendered nature of language, whether it's Spanish or whatever, Italian or whatever, is an attempt on the part of white progressive academics to colonize the language of non-white people. How do you feel about that?
I would say, in a very simple fashion, we know that Romance languages had that characteristic of defining either a masculine or feminine aspect to them. French, Portuguese, Romanian, Spanish, and the origin of that goes back to the incorporation of Latin towards those more endowment languages of those areas that then transform into what we know as Romanist languages.
I don't need the history. I'm asking you, Dan the man, how do you feel about people saying your language is oppressive because it's gendered?
In certain ways, yes and no. It depends on how it's applied, and it depends on many factors in that sense.
Like that's if someone, like if people were learning Spanish in schools, because I think it's very good that it's required, at least in the United States, or at least in Illinois, where I went to school, that you take a few years of a foreign language. I think that's important to do. And what if it was legislated by the schools or whatever that they would teach Spanish, but it would be completely devoid of the gendered. Everything would be Latinx, or mucha or muchex, or bueno, buenex, or whatever.
In my position and in my personal analysis, language evolves one way or the other. The things we do to language marks that evolution. If eventually that evolution marks a more neutral sense of that particular language. It's something that, as communities, will have to decide. Now, in my more personal position in that sense, I would tell you that the term Latinx is something that it was fabricated within the movements of the United States, and not recognizing that the movements that are already in Latin America, in particular Spanish, had come to the decision of making, instead of an X, an E. So instead of saying Latino or Latina to refer a neutral base of it, it's Latine.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you totally that language evolves and that we can kind of come to this collective consensus on how to adapt to it or not. But and like, for example, like the term partner, people talk like, oh, my, instead of saying wife, husband, or girlfriend, boyfriend, they say my partner. That's, to me, that's a natural evolution that I think is inclusive in a good way. I do see people forcing it down people's throats, but there's plenty of people I respect who are not doing that type of language control, who use the term partner, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. But what I dislike is that this is not a natural evolution. It is like forced ideological. It's saying the gender binary is oppressive, and therefore we're going to restructure how the words are used to get people to think differently. I don't like that.
What's interesting on that, I would ask, how can we differentiate between a natural or an unnatural evolution in the human interactions between their reality and how that reality is expressed? To define that is extremely interesting, because we would have to accept that ideology is a natural construct of the exploration of the conscious. So, how can we define how can we define actions or elements that constitute an unnatural relation between the individuals, group of individuals, and the reality versus unnatural ones?
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. I do want to. Okay. Also, Epicurious 2.0 is in the back room. You got to have camera on, or I cannot bring you on. Got to assume responsibility for the words that you say, which I appreciate you doing, Dan. I'm going to move on to chats in a second here, but do you have a specific point or question that you want to make right now?
Well, in regards of the early points of the conversation,
yeah,
I think that the major aspect to understand where we are currently as republics and democracies, and particularly and focus more in here, Western Hemisphere. I won't go into other parts of the world yet. I think is that we need to understand our history, why we constructed these republics, and how they have evolved up to today, and understanding at least the three major epochs of how those evolutions happened, having the current one, modern process of that evolution of our democracies and republics in the last 75 years, which we're still currently on right now. And that marks the understanding of how human rights are applied, how civil liberties are applied, how the notion of human rights have evolved. For example, we see now that the accessibility to technology is constituted as a human right, the accessibility to water, the accessibility to medicine, the accessibility to reproductive rights are constituting what some experts call a third generation of human rights. That would give us that notion. And yeah, we differ. The elements of Christianity have no claim over the constructions of the republics.
Well, Dan, I can appreciate that perspective. My recommendation, which is the same recommendation I recommend to many people.
I know what you're going to say.
Some more Jordan Peterson.
I've watched enough.
That's
He-
fair.
He reminds me. There's a. Have you ever heard of Javier Milei, the current president?
Oh yeah.
Look, we've had the Mileis and we had the Maduros. We've had the Ortegas and we had the Pinochets. So again, it to us.
Ooh, next time you come on, we'll have to talk Pinochet because I've got some questions and some curiosity about that.
Yeah.
All right, but thank you,
All
Dan.
right.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
I know. All right, Epicurious, I'm kicking your ass. Without any camera. Actually, I'm going to go urinate and fill up my coffee. I will take more questions from the chat. BRB with the best music of all time. Guess for me, flush the toilet. All right. Let's answer some of these questions. Dun, 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 dun. Speaking of democracy, Alex O'Connor had a great interview. Oh, can people hear me? Hold on. Mother of God. There we go. View on YouTube. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I saw this. Speaking of democracy, Alex O'Connor had a great interview with the anti-democratic philosopher of democracy. I will be watching that again. I listen to it in the background, and then I will be pulling up clips from that. So yeah. Yeah, but democracy, man. Listen, obviously, there's no better system of government than democracy. I mean, I don't even, what's the alternative to democracy? Monarchy? You know, you have a lot of these goons on the internet advocating for monarchy. It's like, okay, you know what? Look, I'm all for autistic degeneracy in the form of like League of Legends, super meta League of Legends comedy, right? That's perfectly acceptable. But if you're gonna be autistic and have that superpower and then direct it towards monarchy, like let's advocate for a monarchy. It's like, okay, it's like that is not the space that I want to be in. If anyone is unironically saying, "Well, in my perfect system, we'd have a king," in the United States. Oh, okay. Well, you live entirely in the online world, and I live in it enough that I don't want to be too close to people who only live in the online world. Right? I like having one foot in grass. You know, one of the things I appreciate about some people in my audience, I don't know, obviously the majority of people in the audience, but I do get emails from people who are like teachers or something like that, and it is nice to hear from people who are they themselves touching grass, right? Because it's sort of like I would much rather speak to and appeal to and influence 1,000 people who they themselves are capable of influencing others rather than 100,000 autistic 14-year-olds, right? Now, happy to have autistic 14-year-olds watch my videos. Especially if those autists are going to use their powers for good, which is certainly possible. But if, like people like, you go see like a Hassan Abi chat where it's just like, it's like schizophrenia, really. If if a chat is moving that quickly, that's just not a productive use of anyone's time. Anyway, I'm behind in these comments, so hold on. Let's rapid fire these. Views on electoral college, kind of lame. I would it maybe shouldn't be done away with, but the votes should be split by state. So if you get 60% of the vote in Texas, you should get 60% of the electors rather than all of them. It's kind of weird that 51% you get all the electoral votes. That's kind of odd. Yeah, Israel has moved away from wanting a two-state solution. They are at direct odds with U.S. foreign policy. So the current government of Israel says we're not doing what the U.S. foreign policy wants to do. So it's like, why do we continue to support them? Why are we not pressuring them like we do other countries to bend to our foreign policy? Let's see. Bum, 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 bum. All right, we're catching up. Relativists need to shut the F up. Maybe. Okay. At least with monarchy, we know who's in charge. I actually want monarchy. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Listen, make a real difference in the world, okay? Stop spurging online about monarchy. Competency tests to be able to vote seems like the best system, but the issue is who designs a test. I agree. It's the same thing with citizenship tests. Well, people say, if you have a citizenship test, the slippery slope obviously could be you make the test so difficult that no one gets in. And therefore voting tests would be equally as bad. It's like, yeah, but the fact that a slippery slope exists does not mean that is not a sufficient counter argument, because we do have citizenship tests, and as far as I know, they're not like insane, and it's not some Jim Crow level thing. So, I do think it should be harder for people to vote. I think that your right to vote, that no one, I don't believe that rights exist independent of themselves, meaning no one gets any rights unless people have responsibility, right? What is the Jordan Peterson line? Your rights are my responsibility. I do not believe you should get a right to vote unless you do something that supports the social structures that enable those rights to exist in the first place. I believe in a mandatory civil service, right? Which is already exists in Israel, South Korea, Switzerland. It's like, this idea, oh, how dare you suggest that American 18-year-olds should have to lift a goddamn finger to earn any of the rights that are so unbelievably incredible and rare and difficult to have been fought for. It's Jim Crow to suggest a white 18-year-old should have to spend 6 months doing community service and learning basic skills. Okay. I thought Mencius Moldbug was cool until I read actual theory. Mencius Moldbug makes good points, some good points. Look, Marx makes some good points. Hitler was a vegetarian, and I have respect for vegetarians. So is the logical conclusion of that I respect Hitler? Well, no. But the point is, people who can be wrong about many things can also make a lot of good points. Let's see. Why do we not pressure Israel? Because we don't want another genocide of the Jews. I agree. I don't want a genocide of... I do not want tens of thousands of innocent Jews to die, nor do I want tens of thousands of Palestinians to die. But given that tens of that, it's not the Jews that are dying at the rate that the Palestinians are, we need to put pressure on those killing the Palestinians. I know. Look, the whole situation is so incredibly complicated. And all I know is that I am not a fan of any country exercising an undue, outsized level of influence on my country. If Israel is not aligned with our values, they are not our ally. And if Ben-Gvir and the Jewish Power Party have their way, and Ben-Gvir's attitude is that, quote, the rights of Arabs matter less than the rights of Jews. Or what did he say? The rights of Arabs to walk freely in the West Bank does not matters less than the rights of Jews. Then fuck that. That's ethno-supremacy bullshit. And the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is in coalition government with that person, Ben-Gvir, is an indication that that government is fucked. And we should not support Israel if that's the government they're going to have. It's very straightforward. I don't see how anyone could disagree with this. And if you do disagree, the chat's wide open. Excuse me, the link to join is wide open. So yeah, I would fail that test, probably. We would all probably fail. Probably. Doug. Speak of the devil. Good sir.
Hey, yeah.
Hey,
I've
you need
been
to thank me for something you said.
I've been really sick
Oh,
this
have you?
week. Yeah, but I'm better now. It's in the stage of coughing up stuff, so I might
Okay,
mute myself. But I need to come on and thank you. You gave me
please.
such hope, meaning, and purpose this week while I've been sick because of you and that guy, the granola cruncher. What was his name? Josiah.
Yeah,
I was bored and sick, and so what am I going to do? I can't do live streams, so I made these shorts of him just making himself look like a fool, and it gave me such joy, and it's all because of you.
Hey, God put me on this earth to make the world a better place. Did your videos that where you use the extreme, progressive gets torched?
No.
Have those been doing well?
When I made them into shorts, they did. But when I kept them as regular videos, like 4 or 5 minutes long, then no. But
conservative shreds, progressive razor wire.
But when I put them into short, and the thing is, you get all these stupid people. They don't know what to say other than "this is a fallacy, false analogy," blah blah blah. I mean, they don't know what to say.
False
so
equivalency.
They just say stuff like that.
Yeah, people who are logic brained, who instead of they'll say that's a false that's a logical fallacy. That's a false equivalency. That's a whataboutism. That's appeal to majority. It's like, well, hold on. We can't just play the game of you said something, now I'm going to identify it as a fallacy, therefore I'm right. It's like, well, if it's a fallacy, then it should be easy to explain why it's fallacious, right?
But I like it when they say stuff like that, because then I can identify who the stupid people are who want to appear smart and use the word fallacy. Yes,
correct.
That's
well, it's a very
what's
systematizing, autistic way of looking at things. Where if I can just put whatever conversation we're having in this prefabricated lens,
but I need your help with something,
please.
I find myself getting too much joy out of this.
Out
of the sufferings of progressives.
Yeah.
And I need help with this. Like I there's like 0.001% of me that's feeling a little guilt. Number one, should I feel guilt? Number two, what can I do to stop if I should stop? Because it is like half my brain tied behind my back to make it fair, and I'm just getting so much joy. Is this wrong of me?
I mean, I'd recommend you see a Mennonite priest and go to confession.
Mennonites hate Catholics.
Is there still confession in Mennonites and all that?
The whole purpose of Mennonitism was that you don't need a priest, that you can go to God directly.
Right. So
by the way, for the people who don't know who I am, I'm an atheist now, but I was raised Mennonite.
Cultural Christian, though.
I was 50% raised 50% raised Mennonite, 50% by wolves.
Romulus and Remus. Hold on. I wanted to. You said you get joy from the suffering of progressives.
Yeah, I do.
You ever been to therapy?
No, therapy is for people who need help. I'm happy. Why would I go to therapy and ruin that?
I guess that's fair. I think everyone can benefit from therapy.
Oh no!
But it is a cost benefit type thing.
No, seriously. Like, I think if some people who are relatively content and happy in their lives, they go to therapy and they become miserable.
I don't know anyone who's gone to therapy who was fine to begin with and then goes to therapy and then comes out miserable. I think people who are struggling go to therapy and then they remain miserable, or they get their misery cured, or at least they're armed with strategies to deal with their misery. I went to therapy for 9 months. It was one of the best decisions I made.
Really?
It allowed me to identify the difference between a thought and a feeling, which I wasn't aware of. Were you aware of this difference between a thought and a feeling?
What are feelings?
That's what I said. Right? My therapist, he'd ask, I'd be in a fight with a friend or something like that, and he'd be like, "Well, how does it make you feel?" I'd say, well, I think he's had a bad couple days. Past couple days, he's been sick. He's kind of pissed about this thing going on in his life. He's like, whoa. That's all thoughts. A feeling is, I feel like shit. It fucking pisses me off. Right? He's accused me of this or that, or blah blah blah. And I didn't know that. And having learned that, it's allowed me to break out of the autistic framework that I've been stuck in.
I like Dr. Phil as a therapist. You know Dr. Phil, the TV
I do know
guy?
Dr. Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's the type of therapist who says, "Suck it up, be more dead inside, grow up already." The world's not all about you. Every day you should wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, "All the bad things that are going to happen to me today is probably my fault." That should be your baseline.
Here's what I'll say to you, and then we'll bring on some callers, and you can take them. We can take them together if you like. You should converse with smarter progressives who you disagree with, like Destiny.
Hey, hang on. I want to apologize to Josiah, who might be listening right now. I mean, this is the biggest diss against you I've ever heard.
No, Josiah, of course, Josiah's intelligent, but he unfortunately directs his intelligence towards pure partisan.
Yeah. He's making money. He has to feed his. Does he have a family?
No, he's got a progressive.
Yeah, progressives don't have families, right?
Yeah, out of wedlock.
Not true progressives.
But you should talk to. I'd be very interested in seeing you argue with Destiny about Biden versus Trump, because when you argue with when you argue with Josiah, in my opinion, when I was just talking to Josiah 101, he was very, Paul, you're fucking wrong. Don't you understand? But then when I bring you on, it's something like, well, let's qualify this a little bit more. Oh, totally. Yeah. Which independent of any argument made, just from the change in tone is an indication of, well,
you think he's
when
scared
someone
of me?
hears, no, I think he knows that you are more effectively armed to make the pro-Trump arguments than I am. But anyway, let me bring on a couple callers here.
We'll bring on Destiny.
Yeah, we'll see. Owen, am I cool yet? We'll see.
Howdy. Yeah,
Oh, sir.
so I
What's up?
briefly wanted to bring up how a concept from Deleuze and Guattari's Thousand Plateaus relates to immigration and how important it is to our immigration debate.
Before you do, let me ask you this. Is
Yes.
hyperreality a Deleuzian concept or a Baudrillardian concept?
I think it's far more like it's more connected to Baudrillard.
Okay.
I think
Because I fucked that up when I was talking to CJDS.
I think I've read Simulation Simulacrum once, and I with my reading group in my first read through of Thousand Plateaus. We haven't finished it yet, so I'm not a Deleuze expert.
Okay. But I believe hyperreality, simulation
Yeah.
and simulacrum is Baudrillard, correct?
Yes. So
Okay.
where Deleuze and Baudrillard really tend to mix a lot is with the kind of expanded CCRU. So that is going to be with like Mark Fisher and Nick Land.
Got it. Okay. Real quick, I want to pull up this comment. PF Jung is not an enlightened centrist because he only carries water for populist conservatives and their arguments. Populist conservatives like Doug. I'm second only to Dave Rubin. That's the most offensive thing I've ever heard. Anyway, Owen, what's cracking?
Yeah. So the gym I go to is a Planet Fitness, right? And so
I love Planet Fitness.
When you are great price, I love being subsidized by resolutioners who don't go to the gym. And so I start every workout with 15 minutes of the Stairmaster.
Not bad. That's very good.
Yeah, in front of the Stairmaster, you have a few TVs. You got your Fox News, you got your CNN, and you got like MSNBC and like a Boston-based thing, like a local type news station. And so when I was on it, I was watching this like Fox News broadcast where I think they were showing like footage from a number of migrants who seemed South American or Central American. And they were kind of being like perp walked out of a courthouse after like attacking police officers.
Yeah, in New York, I'm sure.
Yeah, New York. Yeah. And so, yeah, taking a step to the Deleuzian concept of faciality. So if you imagine the most kind of basic drawing of like a human face, right? You got like the circle, and you have like white in the circle, then you have two black eyes and like a black hole for the mouth.
Yeah.
So think of kind of like the boundary of the face, the area which it can define itself, right? The area of kind of language, of symbols, of things we can recognize, which it has the power to define over. So for example, with the human face, right? The definitions that we connect to the human face are limited to our physical head.
Sure.
So that's its area of
like Doug is balding, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, and you have far too many credit hours in philosophy. Can you
I'm doing my best. The book's worse. The book is way worse.
The postmodernist.
Get to the point. What are you trying to say?
Well, hold on. Doug is a salt of the earth type guy. I am, of course, philosophical.
I was raised on a farm. Talk to me like I'm a farm boy.
Yeah. This is a challenge for the postmodernists. If you can explain it to Doug.
Okay, I explain this to Doug. So I think the closest thing that I'm going to analogize this to is archetypes.
Oh,
I like archetypes.
They're not.
Shut up.
So the face is not an archetype, but it has similar characteristics to it. So whereas the Jungian archetype is kind of part of the collective unconscious, it is
triggering me.
I'm gonna kick Doug in a second.
The face is something which is largely socially constructed, right? It is constructed through our media, our symbolic order, images, so on. And whereas the archetypes kind of come in like a series or a set, right? The face is binary. So the thing that Deleuze and Guattari talk about mainly with faciality is race. And they use the kind of metaphor of the face of Christ as the kind of face of the white man versus the non-white or black, right?
Okay.
So you have the kind of set, the one in the binary or the zero in the binary, then differentiated slightly from the different kind of signifiers, the aspects of the archetype, which then build to it.
Okay.
Right? So when
I'm vaguely following.
Yeah.
How do we tie this into immigration?
So quick example for like the magician archetype, right?
Mm,
Part of it is that it has a transformational factor on the hero, right?
sure.
And so think of that factor of the magician archetype into one of the black holes on the face. And so when I was watching the Fox News broadcast, I thought how important it was that for the quote unquote face of the migrant, or the archetype of the migrant for Fox News, was so dependent on the idea of violence, right? How violence is a defining factor in that face of the migrant. And when you were talking last episode about how you kind of had to be, I don't know, like last I guess public broadcast, you're talking about how it needed to be heartless to not recognize that this man who's like breaking down crying, how to not have empathy for them. What's important to the face is that his crying, his personhood is often not recognized, because he is then he slides into the face of the migrant, right? Because you don't really see him as a person often. Rather, you see the kind of image of the migrant. It is the archetype which is projected onto him, which then kind of diffuses a degree of empathy.
Sure. Well, certainly Fox News appeals to the archetype of the stranger, the outsider. Look at these outsiders coming here. Look at the strangers coming into our home. And the CNN, more progressive media sphere, appeals to the archetype of the what do you call it? Feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
Well, but that's a purely negative kind of construing of it. But the archetype of the innocent child. Like, look at the helpless person. And a lot of those people who are coming over the border are in genuinely, dire straits. So it's a balance of the archetypes. So I understand that.
Yeah. And so,
but Owen, you're not saying what Fox News did is bad, are you?
So, I mean, the statement I'm making is, I guess, amoral, right?
Okay,
you're just condemning nor condoning Fox
Do you
News.
see value in an organization like Fox News showing that some immigrants are criminals and violent?
So my argument isn't that we should never acknowledge when criminals are violent.
Okay.
Right? My argument isn't that we shouldn't talk about not like a migrant related violence. That's separate to the thing I'm focusing on.
Okay. What is your argument?
Yeah. So my main argument is that these ideas are created and we are unable to have a fruitful discussion on immigration, often because the face we project onto migrants, right?
You're basically just talking about bias, right?
No, not quite.
Yeah, well, your bias is going to be the face you.
Which form?
I'm putting a poll in the audience. By the way, archetypes are gay. The archetype of the gay is the man who's very in touch with his anima, according to Jung, very gay. I'm going to put a poll real quick. Should we deport illegal immigrants who have crossed the border illegally in the last 5 years?
Yeah. And
anyway, Owen, do you want to put a pin and wrap up that last point? And then I'll bring on Epicurious 2.0.
Yeah.
I would love to ask Owen some pointed questions that.
Okay, go ahead. Let's do that.
Do you believe people who are not citizens or permanent residents of this country have a right to be here in the United States?
Yeah. So
lean yes, lean no. No, just lean yes, lean no. I know this is tough for a philosophical type person to do, but do you think that someone who does not from this country, not a permanent resident, hasn't come through, they have a right to be in the United States? Lean yes, lean no.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to get to your point. I will have an answer, but I have to grow into it. So
no, you don't have to grow into it. What are you?
What's your opinion? This is
the two archetypes: the archetype of the salt of the earth man and the archetype of the academic.
This cuts to the chase, Owen.
It's an age old thing
versus the I read multi-100-page books about theory.
Someone who's persecuted in Venezuela, do they have a right to be in the United States?
So I don't think people fundamentally automatically have a right to enter our community without the community's consent.
Right. Why don't you say Lee no then right away? Why couldn't you do that?
Yeah. So the reason I don't like saying just yes, just no often is because if I just say,
Because you want to see it sound
no,
smart.
people, well, I love sounding smart, but it's not just that. It's not just that I want to. So it's mainly that I want to talk about how what forms my perspective on why I would be.
Yeah, but you gotta understand,
Yeah.
Owen. I hear you, but you gotta understand that most people on the planet don't care what you have to say. You understand that,
sure.
right? So if
Yeah.
someone if someone asks you a question, what they are saying, like me, I only care about the answer to the question. And the question is, does someone have a right, in your opinion, to live in the United States? Lean yes, lean no. I'm not asking why you have that opinion. I'm asking, what is your opinion?
Well, yeah, and part of the thing is what is the right framed by, right? Because rights I don't think they exist in space, right? They're not part of the ether. And
Right.
so when I say people have rights, I think it's important to what gives that right, because that's important, and then what that right actually is, right? So if someone, follows all of our, the United States or our extended community's rules to enter this country legally, and follow the proper procedure we've set out, I think then they're through the subject which they are experiencing. They have the rights bestowed upon them properly.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And
here's my last question to you.
Yeah.
If you had a choice between knowing the backgrounds of everybody coming in versus not knowing, what would you prefer?
Yeah, I would prefer. Obviously, I would prefer to know, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that immigration's I'm gonna just kind of come to the side and then get to your point. So, immigration is a thorny issue because we have a large open border through which a lot of bad stuff is coming in through, but also we have to recognize people's fundamental kind of humanity, right? And we can't view these people as a foreign disease, right?
Some of them are foreign diseases. Literally. They come in with diseases, some of them. And we don't know unless we have background checks.
They are not foreign diseases. They might carry disease across.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. And it's not like we can't merely view our a border as an immune system meant to reject everyone.
Why not?
Because we can see that. So
because remember you said nobody has the right to be here.
All right, I want to wrap this up.
Yeah,
and move on to the next caller. But Owen, first off, Doug, you know full well. I know you're a man of the people, salt of the earth. Yeah. And I try my best to take the philosophically complex and distill it and embody it in a way that appeals to even folks such as you. But you know full well when you ask a question about rights or something like, do people have a right to be here? Well, certain questions can seem simple, but they're false questions. Like if I say, does Israel have a right to exist? Are trans women women? Well, hold on. What do you mean? What do you mean?
No. Okay, I know what you're getting at. That questions have
Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Wow, clip that up.
No. I said trans women.
I know. I'm kidding. I wouldn't want to put the Mossad on you.
I understand where you're going with this. That every question can potentially have a hidden premise or assumption, right? But one of the big problems in society is this need to be loved and accepted, and I need to be understood. I just desperately need to be understood. If someone asks you a question, my advice to the little people out there is just answer it, and at risk of being misunderstood. And if someone really truly cares your opinion, they're going to ask a clarifying question, and then you can explain to them, well, when I say rights, when I'm thinking rights, I'm thinking legally. So of course, no Venezuelan has the right to be in the United States, no matter how desperate their situation is. It's a privilege to be saved, not a right to be saved. The United States does not have an obligation to save the world, and they can let you die there. The United States can let you die. So, that's you can explain yourself later.
Simplicity. Yes.
Headline first, then details.
Yes. Now I do. Oh, and the last time we talked, we talked about some Lacan Zizek overlap, and that was helpful. So it's all about know your audience, right? And when you got someone
Yeah.
like Doug on, when you got a man of the salt of the earth,
We
as
have to
soon as you
explain
mention Lacan.
the most potentially dense
Yes,
theories.
yes. But anyway, thank you for coming on, Owen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
See you, Owen.
All right, I'm going to bring Epicurious 2.0 on in just a second to talk about, I think he said, universal basic income. Doug, are you a fan of universal basic income?
No.
Of course not. I'm going to urinate once again because I've been drinking shit tons of coffee.
You can bring him on and I'll talk.
AG1.
I'll warm him up for
well,
you.
let's do that. Hold down the fort for me. Epicurious.
Greetings,
What's
gentlemen.
cracking? Greetings.
What's cracking? Some eggs.
Some eggs. That's good. I'm going to have some eggs with spicy sausage after this.
With a name like Epicurus, that means you have more than 12 credit hours of philosophy in university, right?
I took some in my bachelor's and some in my graduate degree.
Oh,
That's
what's your
fair.
graduate degree in?
I did a little bit of seminary and ultimately
that doesn't
educational
count.
leadership.
Shut up, Doug. What was it? What did you say? Seminary, and what was the other one?
Some credits in seminary and philosophy, but it's in education.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, what is your thesis? What is your question or point of contention that you would like to put forward?
2 premises and a conclusion.
Please.
Premise 1: the Constitution establishes the principle of equal protection under the law for all citizens. So
Sure.
you're an American, you should be, and if you believe in the Constitution, that's premise 1. Premise 2.
Okay.
Premise 2: universal basic income ensures that every citizen receives a guaranteed income, promoting economic well-being without discrimination based on status or race, gender, or opportunities, or where they were born or who their parents were. That's premise 2. Conclusion, and then I'll hear your response. Implementing UBI aligns with the constitutional principle of equal protection because it provides financial support to all citizens, regardless of how much our country has screwed them over.
Doug?
Yeah, I would disagree with premise 2, and I'll give an analogy to show why. Because if you take equal protections to mean everybody should get a universal basic income, I should say, well, I think everybody should have armed bodyguards like Joe Biden. We should be equal when it comes to protection, equal protection. You said the Constitution promotes equal protections, right?
Yes.
I want the same protection as Joe Biden. The reality is not everybody's equal. And that's hard for a person like you maybe to understand, but we are not equal.
Under the law, we are. So,
Well,
Yeah.
see, the question you should ask me, what do you mean we're not all equal, Doug? Well, thanks for asking. What I mean is we're not all equal in terms of ability and value to society.
I agree.
Right?
I agree with that.
In fact, we're not even all equal on intelligence, on physical capabilities. We're not all equal. Like I can't play in the NBA. So this whole idea of we all need to be treated the same way. No, some people need to be treated better and some people need to be treated worse. If you're a serial rapist, I'm not going to treat that rapist the way I treat you, Epicurus, because I'm sure you're not a rapist. Are you? No.
No, I'm for happiness of all beings, all humans, especially.
And one could also make the argument that by implementing something like universal basic income, it might lead to more harm than good. Unintended consequences. Well, what would be some of those unintended consequences?
Any
Did you think of
system
any?
can create harm.
Yeah.
Because we're humans and we're flawed.
But I'm saying universal basic income might even be not just it's possible it could cause harm, that it is likely it could. Maybe not 50% or 40%, maybe like 5-10%. But for some people who might have innovated, their incentive to innovate has now been squashed because I'm happy to sit on the couch and play Mario Kart.
I think the innovation part is an assumption. There will always be people that manipulate systems. There are ways around that, but I think that's a lesser evil than people who are born in poverty, born in horrible situations created by just reality. I think we are not. So that's I guess that's my first response to you. My second response, you said we're not all equal. And I agree, as humans, we're not the same. Like, we're different ages. I mean, we're different genders. We live in different places.
Some of us
We
are a
have
lot
different skill
older
sets.
and balder than others.
Yeah. One has a better background than us. But
Wait, who? Never mind. Keep going. I
but
want to show a video, and I want to get both your guys' response.
under the law, I would say we are. We're all three of us are under the Constitution of America. So under the law, we're innocent until proven guilty. You don't treat people differently under the law. That's what I want to point this discussion on.
And in the eyes of God, we are all equal with rights. Hold on,
Even
I want to
that's not
show.
quite true.
Well, Doug, your cultural Christianity.
Because
can
U.S.
use some
citizens are
refining.
treated differently under the law than.
All right, hold on. Let me just be perfectly clear. I am not one. Wait, I am not one to recognize. Excuse me. I am not one to recommend my own videos. However, I want to play this clip. I think it's got audio, and I would like to get. Whoops, no, hold on. I'd like to get both of your reactions. It's 30 seconds. Doug, in particular, I want to know if you think that the negative income tax is a good idea. It was brought up earlier. Okay.
The proposal for a negative income tax is a proposal to help poor people by giving them money, which is what they need, rather than as now, by requiring them to come before a governmental official, detail all their assets and their liabilities, and be told that you may spend X dollars on rent, Y dollars on food, etc., and then be given a handout. If I were still head of a family of four, I would be entitled to an exemption of $3,000 without paying a tax. That is, if I had an income of $3,000, I would have an exemption of $3,000. I would pay no tax. If I had an income of $4,000, I would have a positive taxable income of $1,000. I would be required to pay a tax on that $1,000. Suppose I have an income of $2,000. Then, by the same arithmetic, I have a negative taxable income of $1,000. Minus $1,000 is my taxable income. The idea of the negative income tax is to apply a tax rate to that minus 1,000 and give a man a subsidy in proportion to it.
Now, while I think that is actually, if we're going to do universal basic income, that's a good way to do it. Because what it does is it never removes the incentive to earn another dollar. Whereas if you just gave everyone a flat amount of money, it's like, well, why even get a job, right? But if it's like, hey, every dollar you earn, you will keep 70% of it, even if you're below the negative income tax threshold. Doug, what do you think of that? That's a libertarian proposing that idea.
What do I think about it? I would
Yeah.
reject it more for almost moral reasons, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
But I agree with you that helps with the incentive problem. But if you want to, I would go to a flat tax and then use private charities to help people who are in despair. Like, there's a big assumption here that it's the government's role to help you in everything.
Well, no, not everything.
Like,
It's
what,
just
even
a minimum
food.
threshold.
Yeah. Is it the government's responsibility to make sure you're fed? Now,
Yes.
reasonable people disagree on that.
Is
I
it
would
the
say
government's responsibility? I would say
survival, basic
it's
survival.
it's
Shelter,
in the
food, water, housing, just basic survival and safety, like police and foreign danger. So
in 1776, do you think most people believed it was the government's responsibility to feed you?
No, because in 1776, people were much closer to the land and could go go hunt and all that stuff. But now we're a bunch of degenerates who don't know how to, we've over specialized to the point where none of us could possibly provide for ourselves, absent the social structures we inhabit. So I think the government responsibilities have changed such that in order to preserve the stability of society, we have to reduce income inequality, for example, because income inequality is the number one factor that leads to crime in society. So do you believe, Doug, that the government has a responsibility to address income inequality?
No. Well, okay. Only when non-government partisan entities affect it. So, in other words, I do think the biggest cause of inequity, whatever you want to call it, is the Federal Reserve. So maybe the federal government should step in and say, we need to abolish the Federal Reserve.
I kind of agree with that. But do you? But like, for example, one of the most left-wing things our absolute boy Jordan B. Peterson has ever pointed out is the Gini coefficient. Are you familiar with the Gini coefficient? Doug? Have you heard of that?
No.
It's just a measure of income inequality. So you can, if you take a city, it's like 0.3 is low inequality, 0.7 is high inequality, whatever it is. Okay. The Gini coefficient correlates with male homicide at like the highest possible correlation coefficient of any metric known in social studies, except for IQ and grades or something like that. So if it is the case that income inequality is unequivocally a driver of crime, does it not follow that we must address income inequality in some way? Because I used to believe the only responsibility that society and the government have is to increase the baseline of the people at the bottom. It doesn't matter how high the
The
people
answer
at
to
the
your
top
question
are.
is yes. But then the question is how?
Okay, how? So how? All right. So yes, the government should take some steps to address income inequality. What?
Yeah.
How? What do you think?
Well, I just
I think
mentioned
negative.
Get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Okay, that it? You think?
That's probably a huge one. Like you look at since the 2008 real estate debacle, even the 2001 .com debacle. What was the solution? Federal Reserve pumping money into the system. People who own stocks did very well because the system was boistered. The average, middle income to below low income people didn't own stocks. They didn't participate in that wealth accumulation.
Do you think that we should tax capital gains at the same rate as income?
Yeah, I'm actually okay with that.
I agree. That's probably the most progressive economic policy I would advocate for.
So it seems Doug wants the best outcome for the most people possible.
Who would?
Sure, yeah.
My argument is that is guaranteed by law, and so the best way to go about it would be a safe form of UBI. And I don't know Doug likes to say feel sorry for him. Would Doug abolish the police and public schools?
Would I abolish it?
Yeah, would you abolish the police and public schools if you were president for a day or something?
No, but I would say that the federal government, like when you say abolish, are you talking from the federal perspective or the state? From the federal perspective, you can't abolish police.
But state governor of the state of Florida, the 64 school districts, would you decertify all school districts and say make it all private?
Decertify, make it. If the states want public schools, they can have public schools. But I think the federal government should not be in the education system.
Okay, but
I disagree with that. I think the federal government should provide vouchers that can then be used at state approved schools.
And let's be very clear. What's the purpose of public schools?
It's to do for the local community what basically the feds are doing for the whole country, but in terms of just education.
Why do public schools exist?
To educate the populace, to prevent
private schools can educate the populace. Why do public schools exist?
To ensure that everyone gets that opportunity.
Private schools exist.
Hold on, Doug. Why do you think public schools exist?
Because most people can't afford their own kids. That's why.
Most people can't afford their own kids.
Makes sense.
That's the truth. If everyone who had a baby had $1 million cash in the bank, do you think public schools would be thriving? No, they'd be dead. Everybody would put their kids in private schools. Public schools exist because we have parents who reproduce and can't afford their kids.
Yeah, I'm in favor of school choice, where for every kid you have, you're provided a voucher for several $1,000s or whatever if you just add up the total amount of money we spend on educating kids in the United States and divide it by the number of kids, it's some huge number. If we provided that in the form of a voucher to parents to say you can spend this on schools only that the state approves, and then parents have the choice where to send their kid to school, I think that's our best option.
I think
And then Epicurious, I want to let you make a final point before we move on.
Yeah, I think that what you're both saying is just a natural the way we observe what's happening. If we do that, the voucher system, and if only rich people could have kids, then it would really be like that would lead to the decline of civilization, because then it would just be the top 10% only having kids and then only choosing private schools. That would create an inequality so vast, it would just cause destruction in the economy. So I think in order to preserve the public good and the public peace and our economy, we have to have public schools, because
You
all the
don't have
good
to be
schools would be
rich to have
overput-
kids. You just have to be able to
Right.
afford your own kids.
Yeah, and then the rich will get richer and richer and richer, and all the income would go to the most skilled people, and then the bottom 80%, it's the Pareto principle. The bottom 80% wouldn't be able to have kids or be educated at all, and only the top 20% of kids would get anything close to an education, and that would just lead to a disaster of a society.
Yeah, greater wealth inequality.
Well, yeah, I agree. That's one of the big causes of wealth inequality is poor people reproducing into terrible situations.
Right. All right, Epicurious, thank you for coming on. Appreciate
Nice
it.
to meet you both.
Yes, I need to hash something out with Doug here. Let's for the last 10 minutes here. I'm gonna drop the. Okay, we need to discuss your philosophy of feel sorry forism.
Excellent.
Okay, hold on. Let me kill this link. You've armed me with a good linguistic tool. Feel sorry forism. You're familiar with
welcome.
Eric Weinstein?
Yeah.
Eric Weinstein, he talks about the importance of creating acronyms, memes that latch onto people's brains and stick. Right? Trump is very good at this. And feel sorry forism is a great example. Now, do you think that there is a risk, Doug, of over-indexing on feel sorry forism and saying like, oh, well, anyone who has any sort of empathy or desire to address problems at the bottom, well, it's just feel sorry forism. And then you eliminate the actual valid claims that they have?
Yes, there's always that risk. But you and I both know we attract atheist viewers, right? And
I don't know. I track.
Well, maybe you don't, but I do. So the vast majority of my viewers, the pendulum is so far swung to one direction for them. I will start backing off on feel sorry forism once the pendulum I feel swung too much the other way.
What do you mean the pendulum is swung?
That
which pendulum and which direction?
It's like tough love, soft love.
And you think we're on the soft love side?
We're way too much on the. Although we're actually starting to go back towards tough love, and it's because of the immigration issue. Democrats themselves are starting to say, "What the heck, Biden, are you doing? We got homeless people, U.S. citizens on the streets, and you're giving $9,000 a month or whatever to immigrants. Like, this is crazy. Like, stop it already." So
you think, the atheists are on the soft love spectrum? Because you said you attract a lot of atheists, and you think the pendulum has swung too far to the soft love spectrum.
Yeah, I would say at least 2/3 of atheists, some say 4/5, in the United States are pretty progressive secular humanists.
I thought you were a secular humanist.
No,
I thought you were a huge fan of Matt Dillahunty and everything he does.
That's funny.
Interesting. Well, look, by
the way, when I say no to I'm not a secular humanist, I say that very quickly because there's so many thoughts. Matt Dillahunty comes to mind when you think secular, and I'm not that.
Yeah, it's like libertarian. Like if people ask me if I'm libertarian, I say no because I think of the videos of Gary Johnson getting booed for suggesting that people should have driver's license. Like I'm whatever I am, I'm not that. But if it's libertarian, small L just means like, yeah, stay out of my life, smaller government, less taxes. Yeah, sure.
Okay, but you asked me a good question.
No.
About when will I know feel sorry forism has gone too far? But I really do believe, like I am sort of passionate. I hide my passion because I want to have this tough persona, but
Yeah.
I really am a passionate guy, and I do think that feel sorry forism is the greatest detriment to clear objective thinking. I truly believe that if you really care about the truth, you actually have to become like a robot and not care about human lives. Now, for a progressive atheist listening to me right now, they're like throwing up in their mouth. What did Pine Creek just say? You can't even care about people's lives. But I'm talking about if you want to figure out what's true, you have to be so dead inside that there's absolutely no bias, or you got to minimize your biases to such a degree that you just don't care. And you're just thinking what is true and what's not.
Why is the most important thing we should care about truth rather than?
Because I think
Let's say
that leads
love.
to better outcomes.
You think it leads to better outcomes?
Yeah. Once you start denying reality,
a pure psychopath is concerned with just truth fundamentally.
Yes, and actually, I'm going to really scare a lot of people here.
Please.
Non-violent psychopaths can be the best arbiters of truth.
I could see that.
Mhm.
But
in
the
fact,
difference,
you want to judge
but
to be a psychopath.
Yeah,
a
but the
non-violent
pure,
one.
yeah, but if you just do pure, see, this is Jordan Peterson's. First off, your point about feel sorry forism is the greatest threat to clear thinking and positive outcomes. Let's say that's what Jordan Peterson says. The same thing, except he says the archetype of the devouring mother is essentially the same thing as what you're saying. Is just pure compassion.
Jordan Peterson
I'll
gets
protect
all
you
his
no
good
matter
stuff
what.
from me.
Maybe, or vice versa. Maybe you've been watching a lot of
No,
Peterson.
I actually don't
You just
listen
don't
to
tell
him
anyone. That's
much.
I believe that you want people to think that. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. You seem pretty
Seriously, I
smart.
don't.
I've never met a smart person who doesn't like Jordan Peterson. That's not true. I met plenty of smart people who don't like Jordan Peterson. But to the point about the psychopath being the arbiter of truth.
Mhm. You agree with that, right?
In some sense, sure. In the same sense, that, like a robot is the ultimate arbiter of truth. But the problem is, this is Jordan Peterson's point about truth being a moral endeavor. There is no such thing as objective truth in and of itself. So how?
Is that objectively true?
Yes, that's true. Don't pull this presuppositional bullshit.
Hey, I can do it.
Plantage's argument against evolution, or what is it?
Well, you just said it was self-defeating. No, I do believe objective truth exists. The real question is, how do we determine what it is? That's when the hard work begins.
but the entire you believe objective truth? You believe objective truth exists, and you believe that pursuing objective truth leads to positive outcomes.
Yeah, and the second one's more
that's a faith claim.
Yeah, yep.
That's what Jordan Peterson talks about science being
based on evidence. I'll speak the language of the Christians. It's not a blind faith. I do think that when you can face reality in the eye, it leads to better outcomes. You could take very simple examples like knowing where the watering hole is on a desert so you don't die. Like you, and so did you see that debate between Matt Dillahunty and Andrew Wilson
when he got up and left?
Yeah.
It wasn't much of a debate, but yes, I did see that.
But this is what Andrew Wilson was getting at, is that Christianity could be 100%, the core propositions of Christianity could be 100% false. Jesus was never God, never rose from the dead. Who cares? This you're going to resonate with this.
Yeah, totally.
But
it's the metaphorical truth argument.
But the question then becomes more of a pragmatic one. What leads to more flourishing? To say that men can menstruate and men can get pregnant, like we start shaping reality to be whatever we want, or we face reality in the eyes and look a trans woman in the eye and say, you're not a real woman. Like, you're not. And
look,
so
and
this is what Andrew was getting at.
Yeah, and that is that. But then the question becomes: is metaphorical truth a kind of objective truth? And there's different interpretations of what truth is exactly. I want to ask you that. We'll wrap up on this. Do you know who Blair White is?
Yeah. She was my first girlfriend.
What pronouns do you use to refer to Blair White?
She.
She. Because
Yeah,
she looks
'cause
like a woman.
she does, womanish,
Yeah.
but I could still tell.
Yeah, I can too.
Yeah.
But I have definitely seen pictures or videos of transgender women who I could not tell. until
Yeah,
I
but that's
started
because they're
talking
wearing that's because they're wearing the costume. You strip all the makeup and I was gonna say strip off all the clothes, and then it becomes obvious in most cases.
Yeah.
But you take off the facade. I would
Sure.
say at least 90%, maybe 99% of the time, you can tell who's trans and who isn't.
Sure, I agree, and yeah. But my question is, you are willing to use trans pronouns, like you're willing to refer to a trans woman as a she if she looks the part, right?
Yeah.
It's
And I'm
a
even willing
pragmatic thing.
if they don't look the part. Because I'm a nice guy.
What about? Well, that sounds like feel sorry for them, Doug. How can you reaffirm these people's delusions?
I know. I
Isn't that
have
your
weaknesses.
argument?
I'm a human. I have weaknesses. But I will admit,
Sure.
like, I've recently changed my mind on this. I will be very honest with trans people who ask if they come out and ask me to do them a favor. I'm going to tell them, like, use my personal pronouns. And I don't like if it's not Blair White, but like a person who doesn't really look the gender they're trying to be. I let them know you don't look like a woman to me or a man to me. I'll just be honest with them. I'm going to make that conscious decision out of the sheer sake of honesty. I'm letting you know that I'm playing along with the affirmation of your identity to make you feel good. But in reality, you don't look this way to me. And in a sense, I'm doing them a favor, letting them know that their transition is far from complete.
You're such a nice guy.
That's what I do.
My thing is the they thems. Will you ever refer to someone as a they them?
No, no. Yeah, it's
This is my current I've decided to draw the line pretty firmly now. Like, look, I will he and she, fundamental categories, man and woman. But if I get someone dropped their wallet. Oh, look, I'm using the term they them to refer to a single person. It's like, yes, but not once I know if they're a man or a woman. Then it's a false language game. It's like if I know someone has a pet, it's a dog or a cat. Like, oh, they're pet. But then once I know if it's a dog or a cat, and if I keep referring to it as a pet, it's kind of weird. Like, oh, your pet over there. Like, you mean the dog that you've seen 5 times and all that? Point is, my thing, the line that I'm drawing, and I've learned from you, Doug, that sometimes just saying how you feel and drawing a clear line is like, you know why I don't refer to people by they, them? It just makes me uncomfortable. And I can appreciate that it would make them more comfortable if they did, but I would politely ask them, hey, I know you use they, them, but if it's okay with you, I will try my best to refer to you by your name or whatnot. But, I'm gonna use he and she just in general, because those are the pronouns I use. And if you don't mind,
pronouns
that
are
would be
so
great.
2010 though. Like, it's time to move on. Like,
I know.
we need to as a society, if someone demands to use pronouns, just look them in the eyes and say, grow up. You're so 2010.
That is sort of the attitude I have. I want to this my good friend Anton. Are you familiar with the Cambodian genocide and the Khmer Rouge?
What year? Last week?
No, the Cambodian genocide. This was it was like, I don't know when it was, 50s, 60s, 70s, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Okay. You might find this interesting. This is why I care about pronouns. And I'll put it on 1.25 speed. It's like 2 minutes. But it's a piece of history that I think it will buttress your perspective. This is a video from my good friend Anton, Gold Becoming. And he reads a passage from the Cambodian communist Marxists who demanded that people not use gendered language. Rules
rules of the village are. These rules are passed down from the Encore, the Angkor, the Rancor, I don't fucking know. They take her dress and throw it into a pile along with some other clothes and burn it, and this breaks her heart because it was her favorite dress. The chief says, wearing colorful clothes is forbidden. You will take off the clothes you have on and burn those as well. Bright colors only serve to corrupt your mind. You are no different from anyone else here, and from now on, you will dress in black pants and shirts. A new set will be issued to you once a month. In democratic Kampuchea, we are all equal and do not have to cower to anyone. When the foreigners took over Kampuchea, they brought with them bad habits and fancy titles. The Angkar has expelled all foreigners, so we no longer have to refer to each other using fancy titles. From now on, you will address everyone as Met. For example, he is Met Rune, she is Met Stray. No more Mr., Mrs., Sir, Lord, or His Excellency. Yes, comrade, we reply collectively. The children will change what they call their parents. Father is now Po, and not daddy, pa, or any other term. Mother is meh. I hold on to pa's finger even tighter as the chief rants off other new words. The new Khmer have better words for eating, sleeping, working, stranger, all designed to make us equal. So this has happened before, which is what.
So when we get into the language game stuff, I can say like, okay, it makes me uncomfortable. There is also an element of like, historically, this kind of erasing differences between people, everyone's whatever gender, man and woman don't exist, family is just a social construct, that has been used in the past historically by exactly the kind of left-wing ideologues who are gaining power now. And I think it's actually a important line to draw in the sand.
Yeah, it's a weakness in humans that it's really tough to look at other people and say, they're better than me. That person over there is better than me. And that person there is way better looking than me. Like it's this whole desire that everybody be equal, everybody be non-binary, everybody. I mean, it's ludicrous. We need to, as parents, teach our children that there's always going to be someone better looking than you, smarter than you, more capable than you. But here's better hair than you. But here's the good news. There's also going to be people who are going to be worse than you. You need to be able to
call that good news, but
have a sense of you have to have a sense of identity, and this is what Christianity, Islam, they're good at. Judaism, especially. You got to have some type of sense of identity that's not dependent on what other people think about you. And this is the huge problem with the trans movement, in quotes. It's like it's all based on, I need you to affirm my identity. And I would encourage trans
seeking
people
validation from other people. That's an unhealthy way to live.
And I would encourage trans people. There might be some trans people listening on the replay or whatever right now. Really work on yourself to get your own identity and don't care what other people think about you.
Wise words from a wise man. All right, Doug, I got to eat some lunch and then go see my girlfriend tonight. I know you offered me your daughter's hand in marriage for a certain amount of camels.
2,000 shekels.
Well, we'll have to renegotiate those terms.
What's your girlfriend's name?
I don't want to say.
How long have you been dating?
2 days.
What? 2 days?
Dating? Sorry, 3 months.
3 months. Well, okay, what's 2 days then?
2 days is how long we've been official.
Oh. Am I invited to the wedding?
Monogamy is a social construct, Doug. As you know, it's an oppressive, marginalizing thing.
Has she seen my channel?
Like, no, but I'll send her this conversation that we're having.
Because it's very important that your wife to be sees your role model and what you will become.
That's true. I send her all kinds of Jordan Peterson videos. Trust me, it was the first thing I sent her.
So Paul's girlfriend, if you're listening right now, look at Paul and look at me. Paul's going to become me someday. So if you still want to marry him or go out with him,
let's not freak her out. Anyway, thanks for coming on as usual, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. See ya.
All right, peace. All right, everyone, great stuff. What was I? Oh, here, where is it? I'm still bummed you won't debate seashells. I-Fi. Come on, show your face. Take responsibility for the words that you have to say. I'm doing it. That's my thing. I respect if people don't want to come on and don't want to come on a public live stream and just argue about controversial things, I would say that's the default normal reaction you should have. That's what intelligent people do. I, being unintelligent and reckless, I'm willing to come on and talk about whatever. But if other people are not willing to show their face and put responsibility to their words, well, I just have to, have to draw a rule. Anyway, everyone, thanks for coming on. I think I might stream in the middle of the week during next week. We'll see. Not tomorrow, but we'll see. Thank you, everyone, as usual. Godspeed. Peace.